One for the money, two for the show, three to get ready, and four to go. This is the People's Lawyer, and y'all know why we're here. We're here to create a community of people that support each other, that take care of each other, and do not let the law be inaccessible or intimidating to regular, everyday working people. I'm coming to you today from Afriam offices in Ghana, West Africa, in Accra, the capital of Ghana. Thought I was going to talk to you guys from Togo, but across the border from Togo into Ghana, and I'm at the offices of a dear friend. They went to Howard University with me undergrad. That's got a business here. He said he needed a lawyer for a couple of days, and I was close, and I came over. And as I told you, the People's Lawyer will go to where friends and family and folks in our community are. Don't want to take a whole lot of time getting to the meat and potatoes of what we do. And what we do is we talk about the law, we make it accessible. We support each other in trying to make sure we don't let the law kind of keep us captured or in tight spaces where we don't want to be, and we find ways to get around it and do it. That said, the People's Lawyer wants to get right at it. One of the first things I want to talk about is this whole idea of injuries on the job. What happens if you get injured on the job? And for some people, it may be kind of simple. You go and you file for workers' compensation. You've got to file it kind of almost immediately or as soon as you're objectively aware that you got injured and the nexus or the location of the injury was at work. You've got to go to your human resource department or the folks to your supervisor or your immediate manager and ask for a workers' compensation form and fill it out. There's a couple things to remember about workers' compensation. One is that the obligation is on the injured, the employee, you, us, to give your employer fair and timely notice. So some of us we get injured, we think it might be a small thing. We're like, well, let's just wait on it and see if it heals or gets better because we're good employees and we're conscientious. The People's Lawyer's hack to you is this. Don't wait. You get injured, even if you don't think it's a big thing or a small thing, go ask for that workers' compensation form immediately. Fill it out as soon as you can. Make an appointment to see your doctor shortly thereafter. And if it's not a serious thing or not a bad thing, you don't have to file it. You can pull the paperwork back and not worry about it. The thing that I worry about is those good folks like all of you out there that are in our building community is that the injuries sometimes turn out to be more serious than we think. It ends up being a stress injury or a pull or an institutional kind of carpal tunnel, repetitive injury to back or ligaments and things that we don't know how serious it's going to be. And if we wait too long, we end up waiving that. And so the hack there is the smart thing to do is to get it done as soon or as quickly as possible. The second thing to remember is that workers' compensation is what's called an election of remedies, right? And so if you decide to elect to file a workers' compensation claim against your employer, what you're doing is you're waiving your right to be able to sue your employer in regular kind of court or in what we call torts or injury claim in regular kinds of state or federal court, where you can claim their negligence or recklessness caused the injury. Most of the time, it's probably going to be the best kind of track to follow is going to be to kind of file workers' compensation, but not always. And you want to consult a lawyer or kind of give me an email or shout at the link below and we'll help you find a lawyer or we'll help you work it through it. But sometimes the injuries are so reckless or so negligent that sometimes the money value or the amount that a negligent employer may be responsible for will be greater in a negligence claim or a traditional kind of claim of negligence or injury in court than it would be in a workers' compensation claim. The workers' compensation claim is typically easier to kind of get onboarded and to begin to get support and resources for your injury. But it's also finally just kind of important to remember that sometimes the claim might be of a nature that it might be worth taking the time to consider filing a lawsuit. So workers' compensation, injury on jobs, don't little strain, a little injury, a slip and fall, a knock, a repetitive injury happening on the job, something happening with your vision or eyes based on the way that you use a computer, a slip, a fall, a stretch, a bump, a door hitting you, any of those kinds of things, don't let it go. Those things are important. It's important to take care of yourself. It's also an important part of the social wage or the safety net that regular everyday working folks like our community is to kind of take care of ourselves. We've got families, we've got children, we've got loved ones, we've got our own kind of personal bills and things to kind of take care of. That it's important that we not let these things slide or go too far. So first kind of legal issue today, again, to summarize, workers' compensation, file that thing quickly. Even if you don't think it's going to be serious, get the paperwork from Human Resources and or your immediate supervisor or manager or whoever is the custodian or the keeper for those kind of records by your employer. Fill it out, get it done. If you have questions about how serious the injury is and the level of negligence and irresponsibility or recklessness shown by your employer, you may want to think about sending me a note or talking to your local attorney about, does it make sense to consider suing them in court for a potentially larger amount of margin. The second issue I kind of want to deal with today, and maybe we'll standardize this, I'm going to kind of rely on our community and the show's community of viewers and participants to kind of give me questions week to week and month to month. But I'm thinking this idea of a general legal question that I hear from family and friends a lot, may be a way to start until I start hearing more from all of you wonderful folks. And today I want to talk a little bit about kind of landlord-tenant issues. And for those of you that are homeowners, we can talk about mortgages and interest rates and those kinds of things another time or day. But today we want to talk about those within our community that are renting and have a rental agreement. They're renting a property, they're living there, they've got a 1, 2, 3 bedroom or however large apartment it is. You've got a signed lease or you've got an oral agreement to rent a room or a space to live in wherever you're located in the country. And your landlord the heat's not working, the water's not working, the hot water's not working. There's something kind of very basic in your lease that the landlord has a requirement to kind of make sure is appropriately working, it's healthy, and it's safe, and they're not doing. Lots of folks just kind of throw their hands up in the air, maybe give the landlord a call and wait for them to get it done. In most places in the country, and almost everywhere, there are some places that are a little unique and a little different, but most places in the country, they have landlord-tenant courts. And in those landlord-tenant courts, if your landlord's not doing something appropriate, what you can do, and we can help you with it if you've got challenges or questions about how to do it. And remember the hack from the earlier program that we can always go to the clerk of the court office and talk to them and get some help about what's the kind of proper paperwork. But if your landlord's not doing something appropriate, there's often what's called an abatement or reduction in the amount of money you pay. But to get that, you've got to file and follow kind of appropriate standard guidelines to do it. And this is what you do. In most places you do this. And listen, this thing varies state to state, so it'll be important to talk to me or email me so we can chat about it, or get you connected with a lawyer a landlord tenant or a property lawyer in your jurisdiction that you feel comfortable with. But you've got to physically go and file, or in some places they let you do it digitally or electronically now, but you've got to file what's called a complaint in the housing court. In the housing court, what you do is you simply detail what the landlord isn't doing that's a part of the promise of the lease agreement. And most lease agreements, even if they don't include it, have standard things that are supposed to be there, right? Safely, you're supposed to be able to safely enter and exit, egress and egress your abode or the place you're leaving. You're supposed to be able to have a temperature that's regulated in a safe manner. Your appliances are supposed to be working. There shouldn't be leaks, there shouldn't be damage, there shouldn't be electrical wires that are dangerous maybe to you or even the children. If those things exist, you go down and you file a complaint, or we call it a complaint, but it's a filing with the court, housing court, which is a special court to handle typically landlord and tenant issues. You file a petition or a complaint, You kind of simply write out what the issue is, that there's a hole in your ceiling or there's some kind of leakage in your ceiling that your landlord hasn't fixed. You then file there, and then you begin to enter your rent with the court there. And there'll also be a requirement to kind of notice and certify that you notice, or you had somebody hand deliver a copy of the complaint to your landlord or to your landlord's agent. We can talk about what all those things mean offline. And then the court will schedule an initial kind of conference to figure out what it is, and you'll get a real good sense in typically a summary hearing. And again, I want to be clear, these things kind of change in terms of the metrics or the dynamics of how they work in each location, but they're generally kind of the same. This idea about a landlord-tenant code has been largely institutionalized throughout our country. Some of you might be living on federal lands, might be living on reservations, maybe living in some kind of unique kind of public housing setup where things may be just a little different. They have similar things in all those situations, and we can talk through how to do those things where they're a little uniquely different. But you go in and you file the complaint that I talked about and just kind of describe what the issues that you're having. If you need help writing that, again, we'll get you help, or there's all kinds of summary kinds of ways to do it online that you can kind of follow and do. And you file that, and then you also give your, the court will show you how you file, or also with that, you place your rent for whatever the coming month is with the court. And the court will make a decision about whether that rent has to be paid, whether it's abated or reduced, or whether it's deducted. But what this does is it puts your landlord on notice that they've got to begin to take care of that issue, and that you're not going to stand by and let that happen without trying to take care of yourself and getting some kind of recourse. So don't be renting in unsafe environments or uncomfortable environments where things that the landlord controls, like heating and air and oven and the physical kind of damage to the property, is going untreated. There's a way to do that and get your landlord on notice and get it done, I think, quickly. One little caveat to all this is that some of you will have kind of good relationships with the folks that you are renting from, which would be great. And sometimes a phone call and a lawyer letter to kind of bump them up to begin to put this on the priority list is also a good and solid thing to consider and do. And so again, we don't want any of our folks in this community to be living in rental situations that are uncomfortable or unsafe. If you have further questions about this, the People's Lawyer will help you, will support you. I'm coming at the echo of your email or call to help you by either phone call and or even showing up if I have to. All right. So number 3, and maybe the last thing for today, is this topic of wealth protection. You may recall from the first show that I talked about how important it is to track and make sure your paychecks are correct, to make sure your health insurance are making deductions and charging you appropriately, and the kinds of things that you can do if they seem wrong, and the way to challenge them. And again, the People's Lawyer is available to kind of help you and talk to you about that. Today, in this kind of area of protecting our money or our wealth, I want to talk about wills. And a lot of us, don't think about this idea of what happens after we're gone. It's a hard and kind of morbid topic to think about. But one of the ways that the courts and lawyers begin to take money and bill our estates when we're gone is when we don't leave wills outlining and detailing exactly how we want whatever resources we have left, however big or small they are, how we want them to be allocated. And so what happens, so the people that end up passing away or moving on or getting angel wings, as they say in my community, getting angel wings before or without having a will, those resources are highly contested in probate court. And lawyers are assigned, they're able to bill the estate. And as they try to figure it out, sometimes there's disputes between some of the relatives and loved ones you left behind about how that money, resources, house or property is going to get doled out. And so what happens is that in the process of probating or devising that, often the estate can really be financially hit hard just because of the simple fact it wasn't a will. And so I want to encourage all of us in our community. It's something that I've had to come home to. I've been a lawyer since 1995. And it took me a long time to think about this idea of doing a will. I finally did it some years ago, and it's important, but it's a hard thing to do because, that's a difficult topic to think about. But if we love our folks that are here, our nephews, our nieces, our children, if we love them, right, and we're really thinking about them, one of the things that we want to do is as we pass on or move on, is we want to think about how do we make life less stressful for them, because they're already gonna be dealing with the idea of us being gone and the pain of that. And we want to make that as stress-free as possible. And so I want to encourage everybody on here to, however big or small the resources you think you have, is to think about writing a will. We'll provide some resources for it. Happy to help you do it if you contact the People's Lawyer. I'm happy to help you do it, but the main thing is that we want to do things that begin to kind of, for regular everyday working people, we don't want to give our resources and our money away, right? The very rich and wealthy have got all kinds of trusts and all kinds of other things where they make sure their money can't be touched. We want to start doing the small things to make sure that we kind of do those same kind of things. The regular folks that make up the backbone of the country and the world, do the hard and difficult and important work. The folks who really, really make the country run and the world run. We want to take care of ourselves in the same kind of way. We're just as important. Our lives are just as valuable. Just because we're not rich and famous has nothing to do with that. And so I want to encourage and press all of us to set a deadline and a goal. I'd suggest 30 days or less to begin to work on getting a will done. And again, we'll support and help you do that any way you think you need. I'm also sure there's amazing lawyers all over in your communities that can help you get that done really, really easy. All right, so that's the three major things for today. Looking forward to hearing from y'all and talking to you more soon. Thanks.